afternoon and welcome to our webinar today, which is being presented by our guest speaker, the international author, speaker and CEO of GE360, Federico Vargas. Federico will be looking at how we can prepare our PMOs for 2021, giving us some practical guidance on how we can face a new year feeling confident. Federico, over to you.
Thank you, Hannah. Hope you guys can hear me well. Good afternoon for you guys. It's good morning for me. It is a pleasure for me to be again here talking about this particular topic, and we're going to try to make it as interactive as possible, and we're going to be using the Menti, and so I will ask very kindly of it, all of you, if you could actually join on your cell phones. Menti, I'm going to write it down here, www.menti.com, and use the code that is being shown on the screen, which is 5325056. We're going to be using that particular code during the session to ask a couple of questions. The session is has the intent of preparing ourselves and our PMOs and whatever we're going to do next year within our organizations. So it is an exercise of getting awareness of where we are and getting awareness of where we want to go, which I am completely convinced is the right way to go in terms of defining how we're going to do things, rather than just doing them particularly. So I would ask you if you could actually join, and I do appreciate whoever actually gave a little love there. The code is 5325056, and so we're going to move on here, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions. We're going to be interacting, as I said. So the first thing is, what do you believe will be the most relevant topic in P3M for 2021? And by P3M, I mean portfolio project and program, or portfolio program and project management. What do you think is most relevant? Agility. Okay, so we're going to continue. Okay, and we see agility there again. People. Communication. Okay. We're going to give a couple of minutes to that. People, agility, organization, the roadmap, wellness. So we're going to be facing, again, a new reality as we believe it's going to happen, right? And we're all, hopefully. So we see that agility continues to be right there. Now we're talking about organizational agility, or we're talking about agility within projects, programs, and the portfolios. That's an interesting question that we have to ask. Team cohesiveness, and communication, community. Interesting, very interesting. Now that we see that, as you see, we see agility here. The thing that I like most about Menti is that it allows us to group responses through affinities, so it does the work for us automatically. And as we see, I mean, we see all of the other things. We might see agility is the bigger one. We have community and wellness and organization as well. So I'm going to ask a different question now for you guys after that. Do you believe your PMO should focus on that topic, on agility next year? And I'm not saying, it has not come out of my mouth, about the Agile PMO, because that's what everyone is actually talking about all the place. Maybe, okay. So you believe your PMO should focus on that. Okay, thanks for the responses, and we see that. We could give a little more time for answers. We have 36 people on the webinar right now, so we might give a little chance to that. Or we might move on with the 10 answers that we had before. This is interesting. We give room to the additional people to answer. Probably one might see, we might see the trend of around, if we think, if we roll out the maybes, we have 8-1 responses on, we should focus on that particular topic next year. We should pay attention to what the market is asking, right? That is what we could read out in that graph particularly. And as we're going to be talking today, that is a question, a really good question that we should ask ourselves. Are we going to follow the trend? Are we going to follow everyone? Or are we going to pay attention to what we have in front of us, which might be different? Do you think your customers, your PMO customers, care about that topic? Do you think agility is relevant for them? Do you think community is relevant for them? Okay, this is something important for them. Good. You don't know. Okay, thanks for the vulnerability there. Okay. We have a question here in the chat. Let's see. Well, 6 questions. Okay. And I don't have a question for that, but I would probably ask myself, do you believe your customer understands what, if we're talking about agility for that matter, understands what agility is? Or do you think they want to onboard on the agility journey for the right reasons? Because that, on the other hand, is what we find in most organizations. They really don't know what they are actually jumping into or the reason behind it. Good, good, good. Let's move forward. And I'm going to continue asking a couple of more questions before we're going to. Do you know who your customer is? Okay. Are you really aware of who that customer is? Because you said, well, in a lot of the times we get the answer, okay, yes, I know. And I believe we should go this way. I believe we need this particular service. I believe my PMO should look like this. I believe my PMO should look like the competitions. Or I believe that my PMO should look like the experts are saying it should look like. But then I should have but then I need to ask the question of, does my customer care? And who is that person? Or who is that organization? And even more so, do I have several customers within my organization? Most PMOs do. And it's rather important to understand that for that matter. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. You can enter here several words. How does your customer looks like? What does he or she cares about? Will we see agility here again or not? And since this is something a bit deeper, I'm going to give a couple of minutes for that. So please go ahead and tell us, how does your customer looks like? Yeah, if you're in the in the questions that they are interested in exemplary delivery from Muzaffar. Thank you for that. successful delivery or exemplary delivery, uncertain of the future. They want to remove barriers. They are reactive. They care about agility. They care about clarity. They care about pace, speed of delivery, quality, worries, pace. Quite interesting, huh? It's interesting that we have there, and we see quality, uncertainty, successful delivery. They're reactive as well. And we see agility there, but it's quite small. Do you see it? You might not even see it. So that is the interesting question. And that's the reason why I'm portraying this particular thing. Because your customer, and as we are seeing here, we might run this exercise with several groups on different occasions, and we might see that agility might not be. We might think, and we could use certainly agility for successful delivery to improve successful delivery or success, and we might also use it as well to deliver more quality within the things that we do or the services that we have within our PMO. But it's rather interesting to ask a question, okay? Rather than saying, okay, and that's the reason why I'm actually particularly asked before, what are the trending topics? And we have those things, and certainly agility is there. Everyone is talking about that. We see the body of knowledges for project management globally changing towards agility. We see different certifying bodies getting more and more agility related certifications there. We see webinars and conferences and stuff about the agile PMO out there. Everyone trying to, I'm gonna quote, try to transform their PMOs towards agility. And you see, well, now that I mentioned it, agility started to get a little bigger, which is good, which is good. It tells us that we are in some way or another aligned. But the fact that it is not as big as it was in the first question should tell us something, okay? Whenever we deliver the PMO training, for example, in terms of designing your PMO or defining what you're going to go, which is something that we're actually trying to do, preparing our PMO for next year. Certain, I'm not sure, Megan, if we will have a copy of the recording sent, but we could probably ask, and people from our team here will help us with that answer later on.
Hi, Federico. Sorry. Yes, we will be recording the webinar and we will publish that this afternoon.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Hannah. So then, getting back to this, what do you think is more important then? To understand and to deliver and to prepare yourself for what your customer cares, or for what the market is actually asking? That's a very good question you need to ask yourself. And it's a very brave one for that matter. Because as we know, in every single industry, we tend to follow the crowd. And a lot of the times we need to ask a question, is my customer ready for that? Is what by following that and by delivering these additional services or these things that are trendy, that are important for a lot of people out there, am I going to add value to my customers? Am I going to be able to make delivery successful? Or am I going to get into a complex environment where I could actually simply stay in a simple environment for that matter? Am I going to get into something that me, my teams, my organization has no experience on? And am I going to get complicated, moving my organization, my delivery from a simple or complicated, if that's matter, to a complex or a chaotic delivery, considering the fact that quality and successful delivery are the most important things. So you need to ask yourself that. There's a hand raised there, Hannah. I don't know if we want to address that. Peter, you want to ask a question? Hands down. Okay.
Just to let you know, we will be doing a Q&A session at the end. So obviously, if you feel free to put your questions into the question section and we can go through them at the end.
Good. That would be good as well. Yeah, just saw the hand there. So, okay, so moving on. After asking, I mean, the reason for this, and I was telling you, I mean, when you're preparing and envisioning a following year, when you're preparing a pipeline, when you're preparing whatever it is, an automation, a transformation of your services, your organization, the first thing that you need to do is actually add a lot of questions in order for you to be able to get awareness. Because as we probably know and understand, there are no shortcuts to success. There's no way. I mean, we can see it down here, and I can tell you a whole bunch of different things. And out of those things, there are several things that are important, very important. And as I would continue going in this presentation, as we're going to see, focusing on the things that matter will allow you to have a better chance of delivering and achieving success, or delivering successfully to your customers. But as we know, with all the data that we have and statistical data that we have, most PMOs, as well as any other service delivery organization, fail because of a lack of understanding of their customers and their needs. So I don't know how you managed so far within your organization. Whenever we see PMOs that receive awards or are recognized globally over time, most of those organizations are organizations that have maturity, that have matured through time by understanding what their customers need or don't. But most of the examples that we have, as we're going to see, is, I mean, are PMOs that have transformed themselves, on several occasions. You know, that 3-year cycle, that the statistics show of PMOs transforming every 3 years on. Most of the time, actually, I completely believe that those transformations could have taken, or the organization could have saved the transformations a lot of the times if they would have taken a step back and pay attention to their customers. Because as we know, a lot of the times we deliver or we implement services that we believe are important because from our side, the technical side, they certainly are. But our customers don't value that, or they might not value that. So we need to pay attention to that, and we need to understand that, I mean, good things take time, some people say. And if you want to prepare yourself for 2021, your PMO, you need to understand where you are right now and where do you want to get to. Ask yourself that particular question. And then, even more important, try to envision that. How does success look to you when you think about your PMO? So this is a different question. We understand what is trendy. We understand, or we actually just found and discussed, and what is important for your customer. And we also asked the question of, does my customer care about this? I want to see how the success looks to you when you think about your PMO. How will your PMO look next year if it were successful? I'm going to give you a couple minutes for that. For some reason, this is not showing. There you go. Valued, accepted, aligned with strategy, reduced administration, delivery within budget. Value for money, delivering or using agile methodologies, I would say. Prioritization, lean, Interesting to see a couple of things here. And we'll get into that in a couple of minutes when we finish this particular round of questions. Agility focused, relationship focused, customer satisfaction. Interesting. What does this image tells you in relation to the others that we saw? There are a couple of things that I see here which are really interesting. First, of course, it is the fact that we have valued there as top thing when you think about success. And when we think about PMOs and all the data that we have before, and we talk with PMO leaders globally, most of the time is they need to feel valued, they need to feel empowered, they need to, for the organization and their customers' hands, to see the value they provide. Because most of the time, upper management, C-level, does not see the value. And it depends as well of where the PMO is actually based and what type of PMO is. But this thing of value, it's a calling that we see everywhere. When we do consulting, when we do training, when we talk about PMO in general, most PMO leaders, and I'm not talking about the project portfolio program managers, I'm talking about the PMO leaders, don't feel valued. They see no clarity, as we saw before, on where their PMO is going, or where whether their organizations think they should continue to have a PMO for that matter. So the fact that we have that as big, it's just a reflection of what we see. But the other thing that I see here is that, the whole bunch of different things that we have smaller there is because, as we know, there are no two PMOs that are alike or look alike. Every single PMO is different. We have different customers. We are different organizations. And we have different strategies behind it. But perhaps we should think rather interesting, and we can ask the question the other way around. How will your customer say or that you had success? Is your customer going to look at things the same way that you do? Are you certain that your customer actually thinks that by valuing or seeing value in your PMOs, that's success for them? And this is interesting. I'm not saying you should not care about what you value and how you measure value for yourself. But what we're trying to say here is take a little step, then again, step back and ask yourself the question. I'm a service delivery organization. You might be a one-person organization. You might be a big PMO. Doesn't matter. How am I delivering value to my customer? Because that's success for them. It's success for all of us. Once you deliver value to your customer and you make them feel, or that you make them feel, or are you being able to provide evidence that whatever you do or deliver provides value and allows them to be successful, then you're going to be, then and only then you will feel and you will be valued for that matter. So rather than saying, okay, how do I look at success, we should probably look at an next question. In terms of the services that we have, in terms of what we deliver, in terms of what we do, how do they look at it? How do they look at it? In order for you to be able to focus on that, because energy, that's they say energy goes where your focus is, and most of the things that you do relate to how you see things and understand things. And if you continue to focus on what you believe is success without focusing on what your customers value or see, then you're going to be having a bit of trouble. And that is what we see in every single organization. I do need my organization. I do need my customer to empower. I need my customer to value. I need the project managers to see you. Have you asked yourself, how many times do project managers come to you as the PMO for assistance, for example? Does your organization rely on what you deliver to be successful? What are you going to focus on in 2021 to turn your reality into success? What are you going to focus on to transform your PMO? The other question is, were you or do you think your PMO was successful in 2020? And take it a step further. Ask your customer the question, do you believe or do you know if your customers believe that your PMO was successful in 2020 with all the things, the pandemic and everything that we have been facing? Because then you can focus on what you need to transform or what do you need to keep doing. If you were successful, you need to ask yourself a question. Do you have to change? Is there any need for that? We are successful. Agility is a trend. We are not as nimble and agile as we should. We're not as flexible as we believe we should, but we are successful. Then we are in a good space to start trying different things. How are we going to transform our culture to become more nimble and more agile? What are we going to do about that? Or if the answer is we were not successful in delivery, we were not successful in making our customer or customers successful, what do we have to stop doing? What do we have to start doing? What do we have to reinforce, or reduce, or augment? And we cannot certainly not do all the things at the same time, so you need to focus. And your focus will determine your reality. That is rather important. And I'm going to ask that question. What will you focus on then? After all these little simple questions that we have been asking, what are you going to focus? What are you going to focus on? Are you going to focus on what you think or what you believe is going to be trendy next year? Are you going to focus on what your customer needs? Are you going to focus on transforming or paying attention because you haven't done it before? Are you going to focus on continue doing the same thing that you've been doing? We have here in the chat something. Let's hide the image and let's see what we have. Customer alignment. More on people. If one thing has this 2020 taught us, right, is the importance of who we are within organizations. So more on people. And I would probably say they have not been more important this year. We have always been important. This just has shown us that particular thing. And that thing of what we're seeing in the middle of more reflective practice to understand more of what my PMO needs, it's very important. Providing a service that supports project managers' organization to be proactive more often than reactive. Best practice, improve communications, clarify roles and responsibilities, stakeholder engagement, PMO identity, strategic alignment, customer understanding of success, transparency and customer collaboration. And we have here the customer experience or the user experience needs. Great. People communication involvement early on proactive. And this was probably sort of a different exercise that some of you might have done in previous years, because we see that it's normal. Okay. We are see another one here, moving PMO from level 1 to level 2, enforcing adherence to PMO policy, train PMO stakeholders, proper categorization and prioritization of projects and programs, closer understanding of business environment. So yes, thanks for all the answers that you have provided. As we see, we didn't do this with the other word that actually does the affinity diagram, but or the affinity grouping. As we see here, customer alignment, customer understanding, CX and UX, strategic aligning, working on people, understanding of the business, identity. It's rather interesting, you know, because all of the data that we have that is out there globally for PMOs, and probably your PMOs have gone through that. Most of the time, the need for a PMO comes not from the customers that the PMO has. It usually comes from an expert in the P3M environment, right? An expert or experts in project, program, portfolio management that believe that the PMO is the tool, it's the way to achieve a better and more maturity in the project management within the organization. But then again, when we start actually moving and delivering services, we start to see that in order for us to be able to be valued, we have to deliver, not on what we think the organization needs, but in actually what the organization needs. So we need to take a step back and go back to the why we do things, which is rather important. In the PMO training, we talk about that, to start with why in the golden circle from Simon Sinek. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. That is rather important. Why are we doing things? Why do we have a PMO? Why do we have this portfolio of services? Why do we want to move from level 1 to level 2, for that matter? So we're going to actually take a little step, and I'm going to take 5 minutes for this. And then we'll discuss a bit about it. There's a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And that particular book tells us and shows us that finding and determining and understanding your why will allow you to deliver the how, which is how you deliver the what, which are the services that you have, better. And then they have, or he has. The thing is that the second book was not written by himself alone, which is a book called, Finding Your Why. And in the Finding Your Why book says that, well, this is the way a why statement should look like. 2, whatever it is that we're going to do next year, so that. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to write that down. You already said what you were going to focus on. So that should probably be the focus. But try to find the that after that. To move the organization from the PMO from level 1 to level 2, so that. Let's find the that. So I'm going to invite you to take a couple of minutes to do that. There is no rush, and we have time. And it will probably be the best. You cannot bulletproof what you're doing, but this would probably not be an exercise just for yourself if you have a team, which is more important. And you shouldn't do it before having an insight of your customers. But this is something that you can replicate after we finish this particular webinar. And it will allow you to begin where you should begin, which is understanding your why. After that, when the why is clear, the hows appear. That's as the saying goes. And I love that particular thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't plan, because you need a plan and you need a roadmap and you need a whole bunch of things, but you need to be agile and nimble in order to be able to understand that that plan is you're not going to cope with the plan. No plan in history has been achieved as imagined, because we are not able as human beings to foresee the future. We work in a probabilistic environment. All of us here in the P3M environment, right? And we are projecting all the time. But if you were to look back at your life, the life of your PMO, your organization, and the projects and programs that you have managed, how many of those have coped, or the delivery has been exactly as planned? The answer would be never, right? But when you have a why, you stick to it. When you understand what do you want to do and why you want to take it. And we have an answer there, so I'm going to give a couple more minutes to see a couple more. And we have a 2. And then we'll take the image and start looking at what you guys have created around it. So while we wait, I'm just going to talk about a bit of what some of you actually mentioned about the user experience and understanding your customer. It's rather interesting, in your why, it's interesting. That's a question to ask. Should my why rely on what my customer needs, my customers need or my customer need, or not? Or should it be a why that will allow me to change the hows every now and then, every year for that matter, as we review strategy? It is a very good question. Very, very good question to ask ourselves. Let's see what we have here. To have a team committed to give the best of them to the result, whichever will be good. This is why. Focus on the team. To make a difference in my clients' lives so that a legacy is left behind when they develop themselves and move on. To break down them and us barriers to enable better two-way collaboration, integration, transparency with customer. Wow, To clarify roles and responsibilities so that there is no wasted time on duplicate tasks. To improve stakeholder engagement so that each stakeholder gets what they require for a project. To aid organization to be proactive more often than reactive, so the projects and programs are delivered on target for schedule and budget. To align expectations so that things will run smoother, and to ensure projects are delivered more efficiently. To save money and deliver with more value for money. Constantly think forwards. The organization change is a positive experience. Nice. Very nice, wise. And as you see, we also see trends from some of the things that you guys have shared before, which is great. We understand expectations so that we are all aiming for the same goal. Clarity appear to be there. Simon Sinek, the writer of the Start With Why book, he shared a video a couple of months ago, probably a month ago or something like that, saying that we all have but one why. It is the same why professionally and personally. Okay. And we might have a why for organization, which is for a team, which is not my personal why, but certainly in some way or another aligns to the vision of life that I have. And that is important because the reason why that is important is because if the why of the organization you take part on does not align in a way or another to your personal why, then probably that is not the place for you to be. Because you're not going to be added to that organization because you don't want to be there. And that's a very different and a very difficult, question to ask yourself. Don't know how many of you had done this type of exercise before. It is not a vision this is not a vision statement. If you think about it, might look like that you're not envisioning where your organization is going to be at. You're determining why you do things, which is different. And this will allow you to then think about what portfolio of services will allow you to break down the them and us barriers. Or does this have to do at all with that portfolio of services? Do I need to focus on this thing first rather than creating more services for my customers? Clarify roles and responsibilities and improve stakeholder engagement. This thing we see it all the time. The services are there, the projects are on time, the portfolio is the same and a very balanced portfolio, but still the customers or the stakeholders don't value the services the PMO has. They think it is too expensive. They think it is too stiff. Even though, if you think about it from the technical perspective, it is a great organization. So you need to think about that. Take a couple of minutes, like we just did, to think about that. So we're going to open that. We have 15 minutes for questions. And then if you want to open that room, I do thank you for the time and for all the answers that you have provided. And I want to see if this exercise has been of any help for you guys. And if any of you had done something similar before for your next year.
Yes, so thank you very much for that. That was a really great webinar. And we do have a few questions. So I have the first question here, which is, this year, many PMOs have become very tactical. How can we change the perception in 2021 from data gathering to supporting our organisation to growing?
I think it's really interesting. I mean, we need to ask the question of why have they become very technical? I mean, it was probably because of the need of what our customers had. I mean, based on the changes that we saw globally, right? How can we change that? I mean, I think we should ask ourselves the questions. The first question is, do we have to change it? Is it something that we have? Of course, we need to. I mean, do we want to be more strategic and less tactical? To be more value for the organization, you might think that that be probably a way to go. But the question that I need to ask myself is my organization there already? Because a lot of them are not. A lot of them are still coping and trying to survive. So it's a matter of being tactical right now, you know, and might be to take a step back and be more strategic later on. But you know, when it is surviving, you know, strategy comes before, and then you execute, and that's probably the reason why we had that. I mean, no strategy, and that's the reason. I mean, no strategy in the world probably had the pandemic and COVID and everything we faced this year as part of that, right? I mean, nobody envisioned it. So I'm not saying that we should envision it every other year happening again, but and it's a matter that, I mean, the entire global situation moved PMOs towards that. The global situation will move PMOs the way they have to go. And I don't think we could or should invest our time in trying to move towards a different situation. I mean, we might want to be more strategic. And I understand that because a lot of the times we see PMO leaders saying, we want to become more strategic. We believe that is the way for us. And then you go back and ask the question, does your customer care about that? Do they need strategic support? Or do they still need tactical support? So I think that should be the question that we should ask ourselves first.
Great, thank you, Federico. I do have another question. So it is, what advice would you give to start preparing a vision statement for a PMO?
What advice should I give to what to start?
Yes, so what advice would you give to start preparing a vision statement for a PMO?
Okay. I would probably say that rather than, I mean, doing the exercise, I would suggest if you could find there are two ways that I mean the golden circle from Simon Sinek and this thing that we just saw. The two so that is a great way of understanding the why. But to deliver it and to create a vision statement, I would suggest somebody to go and read the Playing to Win book by A.G. Lafley. When he says that we write a winning aspiration rather than a visioning statement. What does winning look for us as an organization? What does winning look for my customer? And based on that, we write that. Winning is like this, and that is your vision statement. Rather than saying we see ourselves in this particular place over time. So I would suggest to take a look at those two things. To start with Why book and the Playing to Win book as well. Those two things have frameworks there for you to create that.
Great, thank you, Federico. Yeah, and the last question that we have is, what do you think will be the biggest trend to watch in 2021?
Be completely honest, I have no clue. If something has shown me, I mean, we could probably say yes, agility is going to continue to be that, and I'm talking about organizational agility. Things are moving that way, and we see that. I could probably say that, you know, I was part of the PMBOK 7 edition writing team, the 12 of us there, and certainly the book is moving towards that. It's body of knowledge. We know that the APM body of knowledge is moving that way. We see Prince is doing that, and things are going to move that way. And everyone is talking about the agile PMO, right? So agility is going to continue growing. A couple of things that you guys mentioned in the first or the second questions relate to the management 3.0 movement, which talks about managing the process and leading the people. And some of you actually mentioned around focusing on people because of the importance that we have acquired probably this year, or how relevant it has become for organizations to understand that. And I believe that that's the reason why agility has become so mainstream now, because it actually just portraying it is a back to basics, a return to the roots, if you want to call it. So I think we should, as humanity, are going to continue moving towards that. But as to say, what do I believe it's going to be? I mean, everything that everyone portrayed and say that was going to happen in 2020, it didn't happen. And since we don't know what's going to, we have no clue. I'd rather say that I believe that agility is going to continue to grow more and more, but I wouldn't go. I wouldn't say this is what Federico believes is, and because it is not going to happen.
Sure. Yeah, no, I completely understand and agree. So that is the end of the questions, Federico. I just wanted to obviously say thank you on behalf of everyone at Wellington for joining us today and presenting. It's been a fantastic webinar, and we've obviously had some great feedback as well in the questions as well. And yes, we will be publishing the recording of the webinar this afternoon. So obviously, if you were having any technical issues, obviously feel free to watch that again, and I'll be posting that live to our LinkedIn channel.
Thank you, Anna, for the support, and thank you everyone for taking part of the webinar and taking your time to answer the questions and make it more interactive, a bit more interactive. Thank you, guys.
Yes, yeah, no, it was great. It's definitely better to do it with the mentee. I think it's great getting everyone involved. So yeah, thank you so much. That's been great. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope you all have a lovely Christmas.
Bye, you guys.
Thanks, bye.